What happens when Hollywood's most outspoken action star sits down with daytime television's most controversial host? What you're about to witness is one of the most explosive interviews in recent television history, where political correctness collides headfirst with raw honesty, and the results are absolutely shocking. Before we dive into this incredible story, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below with your thoughts, because this is going to be one wild ride. Alan Ritchson walked onto the View set that morning, expecting a typical promotional interview for his latest project. The former Titans star, known for his towering presence and no-nonsense attitude, had been making rounds on various talk shows, but nothing could have prepared him for what was about to unfold. As the cameras rolled and the iconic theme music faded, the tension in the studio was already palpable. Joy Behar, seated at her usual spot at the table, wore her signature smirk as she shuffled through her notes. The other co-hosts seemed unusually quiet, almost as if they sensed something brewing beneath the surface. Whoopi Goldberg offered the standard welcome, but it was Joy who immediately took control of the conversation. "So Alan, welcome to The View," Joy began, her voice carrying that familiar edge that regular viewers know all too well. "I have to ask, you've been quite vocal lately about your political views. Some might say you're trying to be the next Kevin Sorbo or James Woods. Are you intentionally courting controversy to stay relevant?" The question hit like a sledgehammer. Ritchson's jaw tightened slightly, but his response was measured and calm. "Joy, I think there's a difference between having principles and courting controversy. I speak my mind because I believe in standing up for what's right, not because I'm looking for attention." "Oh, please," Joy interrupted, waving her hand dismissively. "Every washed-up actor thinks they can become a political pundit these days. You played a superhero on a show most people never watched, and now you think you're qualified to lecture the rest of us about morality?" The studio fell silent. Even the producers behind the cameras seemed stunned by the directness of the attack. Ritchson leaned forward slightly, his voice remaining steady despite the obvious provocation. "I'm not lecturing anyone, Joy, but I find it interesting that you're questioning my qualifications when you've built an entire career on giving your opinion about everything under the sun. At least when I speak, it's about issues I actually care about, not just whatever will get the biggest reaction from the audience." Joy's face flushed red, and her voice took on that shrill quality that viewers either love or hate. "Excuse me? I've been in this business longer than you've been alive, buddy. I was fighting for progressive causes when you were still figuring out which end of a dumbbell to pick up. And look how well that's worked out." Alan shot back, his composure beginning to crack. "The country's more divided than ever, and people like you have turned political discourse into a circus act. You don't debate ideas, you just shout down anyone who disagrees with you." The other co-hosts exchanged nervous glances. Sarah Haynes tried to jump in with a diplomatic comment, but Joy wasn't having it. She leaned back in her chair, arms crossed, with that condescending smile that had become her trademark. "Listen, sweetie, I know you're trying really hard to be the thinking woman's action hero, but maybe stick to what you know. Leave the real issues to those of us who actually understand how the world works." Ritchson's hands clenched into fists on the table. "The real issues? You mean like how you spent 4 years claiming the last election was stolen, then called anyone who questioned this one a conspiracy theorist? Or how about the way you've consistently mocked half the country for having different values than you?" "I never said the election was stolen," Joy snapped, her voice rising. "Don't you dare put words in my mouth." "You're right, you didn't use those exact words," Alan replied, his tone growing sharper. "You just spent every show for 4 years questioning the legitimacy of the results, demanding investigations, and calling the president illegitimate. But somehow, when the shoe's on the other foot, anyone who asks questions is spreading dangerous misinformation." The tension in the room was now electric. Camera operators were adjusting their angles to catch every micro-expression. Joy's face was getting redder by the second, and her legendary temper was starting to show. "That's completely different, and you know it," she said, jabbing her finger at him across the table. "We had legitimate concerns about foreign interference and voter suppression. What happened 4 years later was a bunch of sore losers who couldn't accept that their candidate lost fair and square." Alan laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Legitimate concerns? You spent months promoting conspiracy theories about voting machines and foreign hackers. You had guests on this very show, claiming the election was rigged. But now anyone who questions the system is somehow undermining democracy. The hypocrisy is staggering. Joy was now visibly shaking with anger. Her voice cracked as she responded, "How dare you come on my show and accuse me of being a hypocrite? You don't know what you're talking about. I've been fighting for democracy and truth my entire career." "Your version of truth, maybe," Ritchson fired back. "But that's the problem, isn't it? You think your opinion is the only one that matters. Anyone who disagrees with you isn't just wrong, they're evil, they're stupid, they're dangerous. You've created an environment where half the country feels like they can't even express their views without being attacked." The other co-hosts were now desperately trying to regain control of the interview, but both Joy and Alan were locked in verbal combat, neither willing to back down. What had started as a routine promotional appearance was rapidly spiraling into something unprecedented in daytime television history. The studio atmosphere had become suffocating. Whoopi Goldberg was frantically gesturing to producers off camera, but Joy Behar was beyond reason now. Her carefully constructed television persona was crumbling in real time, revealing something much uglier underneath. "You know what your problem is, Alan?" Joy snarled, her voice dripping with venom. "You're just another privileged white male who thinks the world owes him a platform. You probably grew up with everything handed to you, and now you want to lecture the rest of us about how hard life island." Ritchson's eyes flashed with genuine anger for the first time. "Privileged? Joy. I worked construction jobs to pay for acting classes. I slept in my car between auditions. I know what it's like to struggle, to be told no 1,000 times, to wonder if you'll ever make it. Don't you dare sit there in your designer clothes, making millions of dollars to spout opinions, and lecture me about privilege. Oh, please, spare me the sob story." Joy shot back, her voice reaching a pitch that made several audience members wince. "Every actor has some tale about struggling. The difference is, most of them don't turn into right-wing mouthpieces the minute they get a little success." "Right-wing mouthpiece?" Alan's voice rose for the first time. "Because I think people should be judged by their character instead of their skin color. Because I believe in personal responsibility. Because I think maybe, just maybe, calling half the country garbage isn't the best way to bring people together. That makes me right-wing?" Sarah Haynes desperately tried to interject. "Maybe we should take a step back and—" "No," Joy cut her off sharply, never taking her eyes off Ritchson. "I want to hear more from our guest about how oppressed he feels. Tell us, Alan, how hard is it being a straight white Christian male in Hollywood? Do you need a support group?" The sarcasm in her voice was so thick it was practically visible. Several audience members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Even some of the crew were exchanging worried glances. Alan leaned forward, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "You want to know what's hard, Joy? It's watching people like you poison the well of public discourse. It's seeing talented people afraid to speak their minds because they know if they say the wrong thing, the mob will come for them. It's watching this country tear itself apart while people like you profit from the division." "People like me?" Joy's voice cracked with indignation. "What exactly do you mean by that?" "I mean people who've made careers out of outrage. People who can't have a conversation without making it personal. People who think disagreement equals hatred." Alan's voice was steady now. Controlled. Which somehow made it more cutting. "You can't even have this conversation without attacking me personally, without making assumptions about my life, my character, my motivations." Joy was practically vibrating with fury. "You came on my show and called me a hypocrite. You accused me of undermining democracy. And now you're upset that I'm fighting back?" "I'm not upset that you're fighting back," Alan replied calmly. "I'm disappointed that this is how you fight. With personal attacks, with assumptions, with name-calling. This is supposed to be a show about intelligent discussion, but you've turned it into a wrestling match." "Intelligent discussion?" Joy laughed harshly. "You want intelligent discussion? Fine. Let's talk about your latest movie. From what I've seen, it's just another testosterone-fueled fantasy designed to appeal to men who peaked in high school. Is that the kind of intelligence you're bringing to Hollywood?" The insult hung in the air like smoke. Even the other co-hosts looked shocked. Sunny Hostin actually gasped audibly. This had crossed a line that even by The View's standards was unprecedented. Alan sat back in his chair, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth, but it wasn't a pleasant smile. There at Island. When you can't win the argument, you attack the work. When you can't attack the work effectively, you attack the person. This is exactly what I'm talking about, Joy. This is why people are tired of this kind of discourse. I'm attacking your hypocrisy. Joy fired back, but her voice was starting to crack. You want to be taken seriously as some kind of moral authority, but you make movies that glorify violence and toxic masculinity. Toxic masculinity? Alan's laugh was sharp and bitter. Because I play characters who protect people? Because I portray men who stand up for what's right? You know what's toxic, Joy? It's this attitude that everything traditionally masculine is somehow evil or wrong. It's telling boys they should be ashamed of their strength, their protective instincts, their desire to be heroes. Joy was now gesticulating wildly, her composure completely shattered. That's not what I said. Don't twist my words. I'm not twisting anything. You just called masculinity toxic. You reduced an entire gender to a stereotype because it fits your narrative. Alan's voice was rising again. And then you wonder why half the country doesn't trust the media anymore. This right here is why. Because you can't even pretend to be fair or balanced. Fair and balanced? Joy's voice went up an octave. That's Fox News propaganda. We don't do false equivalencies here. Some things are just wrong, and I'm not going to pretend otherwise to make you feel better. Some things are wrong? Alan agreed. Like assuming the worst about people you disagree with. Like making personal attacks instead of addressing arguments. Like using your platform to divide rather than unite. The camera caught Joy's face in that moment, and it was a sight to behold. Her carefully applied makeup couldn't hide the fury, the frustration, the complete loss of control. She looked like someone who had built her entire identity around being the smartest person in the room, only to discover she might not be. You know what? Joy said, her voice shaking. I don't have to sit here and listen to this from some muscle-bound pretty boy who thinks he's a philosopher. Security. The word hung in the air like a bomb. The audience gasped collectively. The other co-hosts looked mortified. Even the camera operators seemed stunned by what they were witnessing. Alan remained perfectly calm, which somehow made Joy's outburst look even more unhinged. Security, Joy? Really? Because I disagreed with you? Because I pointed out some uncomfortable truths? Get him out of here, Joy demanded, standing up so abruptly her chair nearly toppled over. I will not be disrespectful. 2 security guards appeared from the wings, looking confused and uncomfortable. They had never been called onto the View set during a live taping, and their uncertainty was visible as they approached the table. The entire studio held its breath, waiting to see how this unprecedented situation would unfold. Alan Ritchson slowly stood up, his movements deliberate and controlled. At his full height, he towered over everyone on the set, but his demeanor remained calm and dignified. He looked at the security guards and then back at Joy, who was still standing behind her chair, trembling with rage. It's okay, Alan said to the guards, his voice carrying clearly through the stunned silence. I'll leave. But first, I want everyone watching to understand what just happened here. You don't get to make speeches, Joy snapped, but her voice cracked on the words. This is my show, and I want you gone. Alan ignored her completely, turning instead to face the cameras directly. Ladies and gentlemen, you've just witnessed something remarkable. You've seen what happens when someone in the media is challenged with facts instead of being fed talking points. You've seen the real face behind the carefully constructed persona. Joy was practically apoplectic now. Turn off the cameras. We're going to commercial. But the cameras kept rolling. The producers, sensing television gold, weren't about to cut away from this historic moment. Alan continued, his voice steady and powerful. For years you've been told that if you disagree with certain people, you're evil, you're racist, sexist, homophobic, or some other label designed to shut down conversation. But what you've seen today is that the people hurling these accusations can't handle even the mildest pushback. They can't defend their positions with logic or facts, so they resort to personal attacks and censorship. Stop talking, Joy screamed, her voice so shrill it was almost painful to hear. Security, get him out of here now. The security guards looked helplessly between Joy and Alan, clearly out of their depth. One of them tentatively reached toward Alan's arm, but Ritchson gently stepped aside. "I'm leaving voluntarily," he said calmly. "But I want to finish what I came here to say." He turned back to the cameras. Joy Behar just proved every point I was trying to make. When confronted with uncomfortable truths, she didn't engage in debate. She didn't present counter-arguments. She called for security to silence someone whose only crime was disagreeing with her. Joy's face was now a disturbing shade of red. Tears of rage were streaming down her cheeks, ruining her makeup. "You're a liar. You're twisting everything. I never said half the things you claim I said." Alan finally turned to look at her directly. "Joy, every word you've said today has been recorded. Every personal attack, every assumption, every moment where you chose emotion over reason. The viewers can decide for themselves who was telling the truth." Whoopi Goldberg finally managed to speak, her voice strained. "We need to go to commercial, right now." But Alan wasn't finished. "You know what the saddest part is? You could have used this as an opportunity for real dialogue. You could have proven that people with different viewpoints can have respectful conversations. Instead, you've shown everyone exactly why so many Americans have lost faith in the media." Joy lunged forward, pointing her finger directly at Alan's face. "Don't you dare lecture me about respect. You came on my show and attacked me." "I challenged your ideas," Alan replied quietly. "You attacked me personally. There's a difference, and everyone watching can see it." The security guards were now gently but firmly escorting Alan toward the exit, but he continued speaking as he walked. "To everyone watching at home who feels like their voices don't matter, who feels like they can't speak their minds without being attacked, you've seen today that you're not alone. And you've seen what happens when these bullies are finally confronted." Joy was following them, shouting at Alan's back. "You're pathetic. You're a has-been actor desperate for attention. Nobody cares what you think." Alan stopped walking and turned around one final time. His voice was soft, but it carried throughout the silent studio. "Joy, listen to yourself. Listen to the words coming out of your mouth. Is this really who you want to be? Is this the legacy you want to leave?" For just a moment, something flickered across Joy's face. A flash of recognition, perhaps even shame. But it was gone in an instant, replaced by renewed fury. "Get out! Just get out!" she screamed. Alan nodded to the security guards, who continued escorting him toward the exit. As they reached the edge of the set, he called out one final time. "To the viewers, remember what you saw here today. Remember who stayed calm and who lost control. Remember who tried to have a conversation and who tried to silence opposition. And remember that this is exactly why we need to change the way we talk to each other in this country." With that, Alan Ritchson disappeared through the exit, leaving behind a studio in complete chaos. Joy was still standing in the middle of the set, tears streaming down her face, her entire body shaking with rage and what might have been embarrassment. The other co-host sat in stunned silence, unsure how to proceed. Whoopi finally managed to regain some composure. "We're going to take a break," she announced weakly. "We'll be right back." As the cameras finally cut away, the damage was already done. Social media was exploding with clips of the confrontation. The phrase, "Joy Behar meltdown," was already trending. And somewhere in the building, Alan Ritchson was probably checking his phone, watching his follower count skyrocket as millions of Americans found a new hero. The interview that was supposed to be a simple promotional appearance had become something much more significant. It had become a symbol of everything wrong with modern political discourse, and a reminder that sometimes all it takes is one person willing to stand up and speak the truth to expose the whole rotten system. What did you think of this explosive confrontation? Have you ever seen a television host lose control like this before? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more incredible stories like this one. The question I want you to answer is this: do you think Joy Behar will ever recover from this public meltdown?